Okay, good morning, everyone. My name is Simon Copon, and I am the Hewlett-Packard Enterprise Business Development Manager here at CDW. It's my pleasure to have you join us today on this session on SimpliVity. I'd like to introduce the team members that are present on the call today. So first I have Masood Kabir, CDW Account Manager for Magna.
Hey everyone, as you all might already know, I am the account executive that supports Magna here in Canada. CDW actually has a global partnership with Magna, and we have multiple teams that support the different regions. For this specific initiative, where we're talking about Hyperconverged, just wanted to give a little bit background of how we got to this point here today. We started working with Joe Martin and the Magna Global team about a year and a half ago. We went through a couple of POCs that eventually led to Magna Global selecting HPE SimpliVity as the global standard for ATI. From there, we worked with Joe and his team to actually build out a global catalog with standards that will allow, quoting and budgeting process for the divisions and the different teams to be very simplified. So we're really happy to have, most of you here and looking to really build on some of the stuff that we've been working with Joe on.
Thanks, Masood. Hi, everyone. It's Dan Palmer here, HPE Account Executive on behalf of, working closely with Magna, Joe, Masood, and the team. Also, we have Kim on the line from our US HPE team, so thanks for joining, Kim. Anyways, just wanted to let everyone know, thank you so much for joining. Real pleasure to get to know you. Looking forward to meeting you at the global conference as well. Masood alluded to, we've got some fantastic pricing in place from a SimpliVity standpoint, from a HyperConverged standpoint for the Magna teams. And this is all available, so please reach out to either myself, Dan Palmer again, Masood, or Joe Martin to hear more information. But for now, thank you. I'd like to turn it back over to Simon Copon.
Okay, thank you, Daniel. A few housekeeping items to share to ensure your experience with us goes smoothly today. So number one, let's keep this session as interactive as possible. We do have a team here to be able to help answer any questions that you may have. So to be able to do this, you'll find a Q&A widget on the right-hand side of your window. Please feel free to post your questions or comments in the chat, and the team will do our best to answer these questions. Number two, the presentation will be made available and sent out to those in attendance today. Number three, for a better viewing experience, there's an option to go full screen by double-clicking on the main window. So let's get started. Without further ado, it's my pleasure to hand over the floor to John Haynes, our HPE SimpliVity Solution Architect, who will be delivering the SimpliVity content for you today. Over to you, John.
Thank you, Simon. So as Simon mentioned, my name is John Haynes. I'm a Solution Architect with HPE, focused on hyperconverged infrastructure, which is what we're going to be talking about today, HPE's SimpliVity product. And I'll talk a bit about what that actually is. But fundamentally, it's a different way of building out the infrastructure to support your virtual workloads. So the requirements that were expressed to us and which we address directly is to simplify the management and implementation, provide high availability for the infrastructure with a minimum of actual on-premise infrastructure, something that would support a disaster recovery solution, as well as offering local backups on site. And I'll talk about how we do that and run through a quick demo. So just briefly, what is hyperconvergence? If you haven't heard this term before, it's a pretty popular buzzword today. But what it means really is building out your infrastructure on a standard x86 server, in this case, the HPE ProLiant DL380, the most secure and scalable x86 server on the market, and using the physical storage in that server and pretending that it's, or creating a virtual, if you will, shared storage out of it. So on top of a standard hypervisor, and we support VMware and Hyper-V, I have a VM running with a stack of software in it, in this case, the SimpliVity software, that is managing the physical storage in the server across multiple nodes to provide high availability. So you get all the benefits of shared storage of a SAN without the complexity. And you also have a simple scale out model, so you can just expand the capacity by adding more nodes without having to worry about how large you're going to get when you buy the initial one. You can scale endlessly and seamlessly without disruption. So the problem a lot of us face in IT is just the time it takes managing the infrastructure that we've built up, because it's a collection of disparate parts. And on average, most IT departments spend up to 70% of their budget essentially just keeping the lights on, managing the complexity and interoperability of all these different moving parts. We simplify that by collapsing that entire stack. And we go further than any of our competitors in the market space, because we converge the entire stack. We either provide all of the functionality for backup, for example, as well as offsite replication for disaster recovery, or we eliminate the need for it. We don't do WAN optimization, but we optimize the data, so we are the most efficient data replication engine on the planet, enabling you to very efficiently replicate your data offsite for disaster recovery. So integrated with the hypervisor, we just use the native management tool, highly resilient and redundant infrastructure, and because of the simplification, the reduction of points of management, significant reduction in the cost of ownership, in the time it takes to manage your infrastructure. So some of the results our customers have found: significant improvement in their application performance. We actually guarantee the ability to back up or restore up to a 1 terabyte VM in less than 1 minute. And as I mentioned, on average, 69% cost reduction. We're actually even cheaper than the cloud, up to 55% cheaper than AWS over a 5-year period. So I mentioned the guarantee, the backup guarantee. We have 5 guarantees that we offer. A 10-to-1 capacity reduction. Now that's across primary data and backup. We guarantee the backup and restore functionality 1 minute to backup or restore a 1 terabyte VM. We guarantee our commitment. The HyperSimple guarantee is really a commitment to maintaining the simplicity of management, that we're always going to be integrated with the primary hypervisor management tool, vCenter or System Center Virtual Machine Manager. We don't have a separate management console, another tool that you need to learn, and scaling either up or down with no downtime, no interruption of service. So how this would compare to the traditional legacy infrastructure some of you might be familiar with. I have servers running the hypervisor ESXi servers on some sort of high-speed dedicated shared network with shared storage. My shared storage, typically people refer to this as a SAN, has some form of parity-based protection against drive failures, RAID, a copy of my production data on it, and a pair of redundant controllers. And those are essentially computers. And when I update the software on them, they need to reboot. So the primary purpose of the redundant controllers is so that when I'm updating the software and I need to reboot it, I can still get access to my data. I don't need to shut anything down. That's important, an important concept as we transition to the idea of a distributed HCI implementation. And then I have a separate storage platform of some form or another, disk, tape, what have you, for my backup, and some backup software to run that, where I have 1 copy of my backup data. So refreshing this legacy infrastructure, first of all, we replace the VMware servers. We become the hypervisor host. Now, we're unique in that we don't need to replace all of them. You can actually expand the compute of a SimpliVity cluster with the existing servers you have, or add in net new servers just for CPU and memory. You only need to add more SimpliVity nodes if you want more storage. So we become the hypervisor hosts, and then using the local storage in these servers and presenting it as shared storage. And we're also unique in our architecture here. We have an embedded offload accelerator card that offloads the heavy lifting, if you will, of the data efficiency. We do inline, dedupe, and compression. I'll talk about that some more later. So there's a function card in each of these servers. Each server, in essence, is a storage controller. Now, the server isn't redundant, so to maintain data availability, I always make 2 copies of the data in the cluster. So if you need to reboot a server or take one down for maintenance, the VMs can keep running someplace else and get their data. So we eliminate the SAN. We also eliminate the need for a dedicated high-speed network. In a larger cluster, they need to be connected on 10 gig, but it doesn't need to be dedicated the way an iSCSI SAN would require dedicated switches. Because of our inline dedupe and compression, we basically have the functionality of a backup target built into the system. We do inline backup as well. We also make 2 copies of those. So we eliminate the requirement for separate backup infrastructure, backup target, and backup software. All of this is managed through the same vCenter interface. And in many cases, we can reduce the infrastructure. That depends on your workload. But given the increases in CPU performance, we often have the opportunity to shrink the footprint as well. So a single platform with a single support contract, a single support number to call, a single management interface, vCenter, one you're already familiar with, running your workload. One of the things that's unique about SimpliVity that is directly applicable to the Magna infrastructure is, I like to say, we scale better small. And it's not that we don't scale. We can support the largest of environments. But because of some of the unique aspects of our architecture, I can build an HA cluster out of only 2 nodes. And I can direct connect those nodes over what are typically called twin-X cables, but basically plug them into each other to create a cluster. So I don't need any 10 gig switching. And then I have separate network ports, 1 gig for clients and other servers to connect to. And I can stretch those 2 nodes. Now, if I go very far, I'm going to need fiber optic cabling. But in theory, I can go up to 100 kilometers. But particularly for a manufacturing infrastructure, I can put these at separate ends of the plant. So I have inside the same facility physical redundancy. One of these nodes can go down. The workload will fail over automatically to the other node, and everything will keep running. So we have multiple points of resiliency built into the system. We do VM level backups, but I can restore individual files. If I need to, I can also restore an individual VM, again, in seconds. So particularly with the growing threat of crypto lockers, we offer the ability to recover from that, practically speaking, instantaneously. The hardware is highly redundant. Everything that is a moving part that might fail, fans, power supplies, disk drives, is redundant. And then inside the cluster, I have redundancy. RAIN, redundant array of independent nodes. That's just referring to the fact that we make multiple copies of the data. So my data is always available in the cluster. And then across the entire management domain, what we refer to is as the federation, we offer the built-in ability to replicate your data offsite. So it can be hosted elsewhere. It could be at a partner facility, or it could be at a Magna head office someplace. Critical data can be replicated there to be available in the event of a disaster recovery. And because of our data structure, our unique inline dedupe and compression, we are the most efficient replication engine on the planet. So we call that the data virtualization platform because it basically gives me the mobility of my data in the same way that virtualization gives me the mobility of workload, the ability to move virtual machines around. I can move my data globally because of our global inline dedupe. And this is what the product was designed to do. This is the problem the project was really designed to solve, availability of data. And it powers all of the things that we do, the instant backup, the ability to make an instant clone, the ability to replicate efficiently, and we really make disaster recovery trivial. And the unique architecture of the offload accelerator, the hardware-assisted dedupe, means we're not using host CPU to do this. So more efficient, and we can do more with less infrastructure. That's the offload accelerator card that we use to to manage that. So some of our customer success points, about half of our customers retire their legacy backup solutions entirely. They don't need them. We only back up workload running on SimpliVity. So if you have other things that you need to back up, you would need other software to do that. Almost 3/4 of our customers get significant improvement in their backup and recovery and disaster recovery posture. And over half of our customers are able to significantly move the needle from days to hours, from hours to minutes in terms of their recovery posture. So I'll just show you how this works briefly. You can think about the VM that I'm storing being a collection of blocks of data. And there's a lot of repetition in there, not always inside the VM, but often between VMs. So if you think about daily backups, for example, we only ever store the unique blocks in the data across all of the data that we're storing. So this is an oversimplification. You don't normally get 4-to-1 deduplication, but the deduplication is also global. And what I mean by that is I won't ever send you a block of data if you have that. So if I wanted to replicate a VM, this could be, I could build the VM locally and then push it out to a remote site. More commonly, this is, I want to take a backup locally and then I want to replicate it off-site, so I have my data off-site. VMware will see that I'm replicating an entire copy of the virtual machine, but under the covers, the systems will talk to each other. I will only put on the wire the unique blocks that I'm missing. So if I'm replicating a VM that's running on Windows and you've got a Windows server locally, I'm not going to send all the Windows bits. You already got them. They're already local. So this is what makes us the most efficient replication engine on the market. Whether it's backups or actually moving workloads, we have a client who has 3 teams of developers who are global in California, in Ireland, and in Singapore. And every shift, every 8 hours, they actually move the 200 developer machines that these people use from California to Ireland to Singapore, and they can do it during the shift change in minutes. So let me show you how this all works. Before I get into that, we could just pause to see if there are any questions. Okay.
Hi, this is Simon Copon. So if you guys have any questions, please feel free to enter those into the Q&A box on the right side of your chat window there. And then we can either address that while John is getting set up for the demonstration or at the completion of the demo. Thanks so much.
So it'll just take me a moment to get my screen up here. All right. So if none of you have ever managed VMware, then this screen might be new to you, but this is the management screen for VMware. It's called vCenter. And I have a demo environment here that consists of 2 sites. So this could be a branch plant and Magna HQ or what have you. So I have a site in Houston where I have my head office, and I have 2 servers there. This is a demo environment that people play around with, so I don't know what they're unhappy about, but someone's been playing around with it. So, but all of this infrastructure is monitored and managed through vCenter. So, and then I have my virtual machines, the workload that I'm running. And the day-to-day management of those, if I right-click on that, it's the standard vCenter VMware menu. We don't break anything, we don't change anything. We just add in some functionality. And then I have a remote site, Vancouver, where similarly I have a 2-node cluster. This one is probably smaller, where I have a smaller set of workloads running. And you'll see I have these OVCs, or OmniStack Virtual Controller. That's the virtual machine I talked about. That's the actual hyperconverged infrastructure. That's the storage software stack running on each node in the SimpliVity infrastructure. And that's managed by our software, and you generally don't need to do anything with it. So the day-to-day management of this, creating a VM, managing the VM, that's the same. It's standard vCenter. So if I go to my cluster, I can look at my storage capacity, and I can see the virtual storage, or the virtual SAN, if you will, the shared storage that we're creating. Across this cluster, and VMware sees this as a single pool of storage, I have about 5 terabytes of capacity. And I'm using 4 terabytes of that. So actually, we need to expand this or clean it up a bit. But in that 4 terabytes of space, I'm actually storing the logical equivalent of over 500 terabytes of data. So hundreds of individual restore points of backups that I can fall back to if something goes wrong. And again, as I'll show you, practically instantaneously. So this is a demo site. We just have a few number of VMs, and all we do all day is make backups. So we're getting a phenomenal storage efficiency, 120 to 1. But in fact, about 20% of our customers achieve over 100 to 1 data efficiency from their infrastructure. So this is entirely achievable in the real world. The average today is 50 to 1. We guarantee 10 to 1, but the customer average across the entire install base is 50 to 1. So what I'm going to do, just to show you some of these things, and I'm using currently 4.2 terabytes. Simon, I'll ask you to remember that number. So
I've got it, John, thanks.
So I'm going to take a virtual machine here. It's a 500 gig virtual machine, and I'm going to copy it. I'm going to make a clone of it. Now, I could use the VMware clone, but we actually have a SimpliVity clone that basically does the dedupe up front. It's a way of showing the dedupe in action. And this is normally invisible. I can't actually turn it off. But if you've ever tried to clone a 500 gig VM on your production infrastructure, it can take a long time. It can actually impact the performance of the backend storage. I'm doing a SimpliVity clone. I'm basically making a copy of the metadata pointers pointing back to the deduplicated blocks. So it is almost instantaneous. There's my brand new VM. Now there's a reporting glitch in vCenter where it doesn't think it's in sync with its second copy. But I've just created a brand new 500 gig VM. And if I go back to my storage, I'm only using, what was it, Simon?
4.2.
4.2. So I've used actually no space to create this VM. Now, if I put new data in there, obviously it's going to consume space. And it's not just the space. There was no I/O there. So no stress on the system, which is why it's practically instantaneous. Now I'm going to manually take a backup of this using the SimpliVity menu. I don't normally do this. There's a backup policy that schedules these. We may have time to get into that, but it's normally scheduled. I say I want to back up every hour or every day or every 10 minutes I can do. But just to show the inline backup, I'm going to take a backup of this VM, and I'm just going to accept all the defaults. So backing up this 500 gig VM is practically instant. Again, we guarantee a minute. So if any of you have done any SAN administration, it looks like a snapshot because of the inline dedupe, but it isn't. So what I'm going to do to prove that is go and delete this virtual machine. So, somebody accidentally deletes a VM, the disk, the file system on the VM gets corrupted, it gets infected with a CryptoLocker virus. Any of those things can happen that require me to restore the entire virtual VM from backup. If that was a snapshot of a LUN, but somebody accidentally deleted the LUN on my SAN, I would be restoring from backup. I wouldn't be able to use a snapshot. So here's my backup. I'm going to right click and you can see I can restore individual files. I'm just going to restore the entire virtual machine. It's going to name it with the date and timestamp. I'm just going to say restore, so it's obvious. And it's going to go back by default to where it came from. And this is an operation that in most people's legacy environment would take hours at best. I've actually had over 24 hours from one customer tell me to restore all of that, including the time it takes to get the ticket raised. When I say OK here, you'll see this guarantee in action. There's my VM fully restored. So it seems almost unbelievable, but this is what the value our customers get from this every day. Now I can use that same infrastructure, and here's where you can see the global dedupe in action, to back up this virtual machine anywhere else in my SimpliVity environment. So I'm going to send a backup to Vancouver. And again, this is a brand new virtual machine. I just created it. From VMware's point of view, this is a brand new server. To send the data that I need to send to Vancouver is very fast. If I go to the other end, it's probably still collecting it in Vancouver. So I can see my backup there. Oh, it's a little busy. So this happens sometimes in a shared environment. Now I can see it's receiving the data. Now, these are not in Houston and Vancouver, unfortunately. I didn't get to go to Vancouver to set it up. They're side by side in the same data center, but when this is done, and it will only take minutes in all likelihood, I'll just refresh the screen a couple times. This would be a good time again to pause to see if there are any questions. My remote backup is done. This backup is completed. To replicate this brand new 500 gig VM, I only needed to put 5 meg on the wire, because most of the bits in this VM are Windows that I already have in Vancouver from other VMs. So this could be, if you compare that to the previous backup, every backup behaves like an incremental backup. It's extremely fast, it's extremely small, but every backup is a complete and independent full backup. So if Houston were to go offline, I have a hurricane, downtown floods, the power is going to be out for a week, I can restore this virtual machine. Now it came from Houston, so it wants to go back there. I just have to tell it that I want to restore this. I'll just rename this my DR copy in Vancouver. And again, guarantee a minute or less to restore that VM. So I can restore my entire workload at my DR site in minutes, physically in minutes, practically, if you consider the operational overhead, but an hour, extremely quickly. And just to show you there's nothing up my sleeve, I'll turn it on. Doesn't do anything terribly interesting. It's just a Windows appliance. So simplified infrastructure, just to manage and support my workload. I don't have the complexity of a separate switching infrastructure for my shared storage and managing the shared storage array. In a smaller footprint, I have resiliency and high availability, a simple platform to manage, one tool to manage my entire infrastructure, including backups, and extremely efficient, unbelievably efficient backup and restore capability. So that, in a nutshell, is SimpliVity. And if you compare us to our competition in the market, they do just servers and storage. Or if you think about the legacy stack that you may currently be running, I can collapse that all into a much smaller footprint, giving me really just a lot less to manage. And that's a significant value prop, that I basically set it up and and ignore it, set and forget as far as backups go because of the backup policies, and if I need it, really trivial disaster recovery capability.
John?
Yes.
So we do have a question from one of the attendees. So the question is, what connection speed do you need to have in order to have site-to-site replication?
That's a good question, and we don't actually care. So between Houston and Vancouver, we have no minimum bandwidth. One of our customers is an oil and gas company, Petrobras, and they have oil processing facilities in the Gulf of Mexico. To do a backup, it used to cost them $100,000. That's the cost of a helicopter flight from the platform to the mainland. So they're one of these people who did a bake-off, and how we know we're the most efficient platform on the market. They tested every possible replication technology, and we were more efficient. So they run SimpliVity on the platforms, and over an extremely low speed, extremely high latency satellite link, are able to replicate their backups every day to replicate the production data back to head office, where they can restore it and pull that production out. So we have no minimum bandwidth requirements.
Thank you, John.
So if there are no other questions, I'll close with, if you want more information, reach out to your Magna IT team, Joe Martin, reach out to your CDW account manager, and I'm sure Simon has a few words of closing as well.
Actually, John, there are a few other questions that did come up. So
great.
This one's a two-part question. So with SimpliVity, what hypervisors are currently supported today? And the second part of that question is, are there any other licenses that you require for SimpliVity?
Good question. So we support VMware and Hyper-V today. We're exploring other options as well for longer term. You need to license the hypervisor, so either a VMware license or, the Hyper-V license is essentially included, but you need a VMware license, and then you need the appropriate license for the operating systems you run on it. So from a software licensing point of view, whether you're talking about the hypervisor or the applications that are running on it, we are a VMware server. So the standard build is a 2-socket server. You would need 2 VMware standard licenses, although we do have one CPU options available as well. And the SimpliVity software license is built into the box. It's sold as an appliance. So no other licensing. I don't need backup software. I don't need replication software. I don't need recovery software is required.
Thank you, John. There's another question in here about what is HPE SimpliVity Rapid DR? I know that you might have touched on that briefly, may not have gone into it. Maybe you can share a little bit on that.
That is a good question. Actually, I don't think I have a slide about that, but you can imagine, so the replication, backup and replication is part of the base SimpliVity product. It's built into the system. But you can imagine if I go to my Vancouver site and look at my backups there, and as I did, I could go find my replicated VM from Houston and restore it very quickly. But you can imagine if I have any significant number of VMs, even more than 10, to do this efficiently and correctly under the stress of an actual disaster could be quite difficult. So we offer an automation tool, Rapid DR, that works with SimpliVity to automate the recovery process in the event of a disaster. It lets you build a recovery plan to say, these are the VMs I want restored in Vancouver. I want them restored in this order. And if you need to change the IP addressing because it's a separate network, we can automate that as well. So it automates the recovery process to make sure that it is always the same and error-free. The other value it gives is that it makes it extremely simple to test your disaster recovery. I worked for 2 years as a storage consultant at IBM, and I did a lot of disaster recovery tests with customers. It was typically 24 to 48 hours in the basement of a colo facility with really bad coffee. And half the time it would fail because the environment was simply too complex. With RapidDR, I can run a DR test in 10 minutes. It has no impact on the production environment. 10 minutes of admin time. It might take an hour to spin up my entire workload at my DR site, but I can spin it up automatically. I can get documented evidence that it works, which a lot of suppliers are asking for now, with minimal admin time. I would make the comparison actually to HPE. One of our major warehouses and manufacturing sites was in Houston, Texas. We're moving it, and it was flooded in the hurricane. And we had a tremendous interruption of internal business, but no HP customer was, really lost anything from that. We were able to switch our production, our order system globally because we had the capability to survive a disaster. And more companies are insisting that their suppliers prove to them that they're able to do it. I wouldn't want to have a contractual commitment with a company that wouldn't be able to meet it if, their manufacturing facility was taken down by a flood or a hurricane or something like that. So it's becoming much more common that suppliers insist that, or companies insist that their suppliers prove that they have robust DR capability. And one of the great value points of RapidDR is it makes it extremely simple to do that.
Perfect. Thank you, John. There is another question that came in. So we currently use K1 grid adapters in our Dell servers for our VMware Horizon View environment. So it seems around VDI. How many 3D hardware accelerator adapters can you have in each node?
That's a good question. So we have a number of different models of server depending on the use case. So the ones that are VDI focused, I believe we support 2 of the older style, well, at least 2, up to 4, actually. It depends on the power consumption of the card, but we can support multiple cards. So I know we can support up to 4 of the new T4, but the other thing that's really significantly different about that, let me sorry, I don't want to get too sidetracked here, but if I have a SimpliVity cluster supporting my VDI workload, I can add into that cluster other VMware servers. I shrink this, so that's a DL360, say. But these could be existing servers that you have. These are not SimpliVity servers, they're just servers running VMware, running Horizon. We call them compute nodes. And I can use a compute node for an extremely dense GPU platform. So whatever that server is, I can put in as many GPU cards as it supports. Typically with the GPU workload, you don't get a lot of users per node, maybe 15 or 20 if you're lucky. And I can augment my SimpliVity infrastructure with those. So the short answer is it's between 1 and 4, depending on the actual SimpliVity platform. We have different models, but I can also go much further and more dense than that by augmenting my infrastructure with compute nodes. There's no SimpliVity license fee for this. So they need to be running VMware, but there's no SimpliVity license fee for that.
Thank you, John. Does that answer your question?
Here's a matching video.
I think we'd have to mute no, okay, perfect. Well, thank you very much, John. I appreciate all the insight there. That's a lot of information, a lot of great questions. Thank you, everyone. So As part of the presentation, I know that Joe Martin is also from Magna is also on the line today, so I'd like to hand it over to Joe for a few words.
Yep. Thank you very much. I just got my video started up. Yeah, thanks for putting on this demonstration today of the SimpliVity platform that from Magna Global IT. This is our supported HCI platform going forward. It's been a long process to get to this point. We went through a lot of other solutions, and to be fair, there's a lot of great solutions that are out there. But with the HPE SimpliVity platform, we found that this actually directly addresses some of the biggest concerns that we see at the divisions, dealing with multiple server rooms, dealing with the need to be able to fail to locations off-site and guarantee that the stuff is going to come back up. We've gone through the process to test out all of these solutions, the backup features, including the rapid DR. So I was happy to see that someone had asked a question about that. We have tested out rapid DR, and we have videos to show exactly how it works, and it's been quite successful in our environment. As far as global IT and what we can do to support you, first, we've worked out some incredible deals for the SimpliVity platform. So if you need to get pricing for your location to find out what this would cost, we can help right-size it and get you some numbers for that. We offer administration packages so that you don't need to worry about maintaining the back-end infrastructure of your environment. We manage, to date, about 55 different locations within Magna where we are the ones that maintain their whole virtualization platform. And that way, you can focus on what's important for your location and not have to worry about keeping the lights up and running. So we can help with all that. And then also we can provide this as an OpEx model to a lot of divisions. If you're within the US, Canada, Germany, or Austria, we're able to provide an OpEx option for you, so that way you don't need to necessarily carve out any capital from your budgets. We turn this into an operational expense, and for a lot of locations that can be pretty helpful, especially if you got a very scrupulous general manager who likes to keep as much money in-house as possible. So yeah, I don't know if there's any specific questions that anyone has for me. It's worth saying that my team is a global team, so if you do have any needs, we are a 24/7 operation, and we can help you out with any of your hardware infrastructure. So,
thank you so much, Joe. Appreciate that. So just wanted to thank everybody again for attending today's session and presentation. If you guys do have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Joe directly. And then just to close things out from a next steps and action items perspective, just want to let everybody know that everybody will be getting their gift cards sent out to all the attendees that attended today by early next week. Sorry, we won't be able to give you a Timmy's coffee for tomorrow. But we will work diligently to get those out as soon as possible. As Daniel mentioned earlier in the presentation at the onset, HPE and CDW will have a booth at the Magna conference coming up in October. So for everybody that's going to be in attendance, hopefully you guys will be able to come out and support. Please stop by the booth, and it'd be great to meet everybody in person as well. And finally, if you have any projects in the short term and you want to get engaged, just as Joe said, whether the team is here to help you right-size any of your projects, your environment, we have the team here to support you, and just collaborative between CDW and HPE to help Magna and its affiliates going forward. So thank you again, everyone, for your time today. Hope there was some value to you. Please reach out if you have any other further questions. Thank you so much, and have yourselves a wonderful day.
Thank you.